hockey. Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
That's right. It's Judd's Hockey Show. We're at full strength. Judd, Jessi Pierce, who of course covers the Wild for the National Hockey League website, Bardown Beauties, AJ Fredrickson. And we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. We are 2 days away from the start of training camp. We are 2 days away from getting underway. What is the excitement level on this show right now about the players hitting the ice on Thursday, Jessi Pierce? You excited?
Woo! It's always like that back to school vibe, right? Like I was out at the Minnesota Wild tee-off yesterday, so I even got to catch up with a couple of guys there and just, hey, how's your summer? How was it? Yada yada. Bill Guerin Bill Guerin continues to give me a hard time. So thank you for that constant ongoing memory. That's fun.
You're welcome.
For which part of that show? The Draisaitl comment? And
all of it.
McDavid
He
comment?
said, hey, Jess, are you doing better than the last time I saw you? Wow, you were a bleeping mess. And that's all he said.
That's Billy. That's Billy.
I doubled down on the Draisaitl.
You did?
Oh, yeah. I said, I stand by what I said. And he just audibly sighed and said, no, Jess, no. And then we dropped it.
I mean, you just wait. If you're a GM someday, you know what? You'll say, Leon, Connor, can't pay you. What are you, crazy? I got to build a roster here. I can't pay you that much. No. Take a hometown discount or get out of here.
Why everybody's getting on a number like Sidney Crosby and just won 8.7?
How about that? Where did that arbitrary figure come from? Which, by the way, is pretty low for a Hall of Fame Pittsburgh Penguin.
But he's old, right?
True.
I mean, like it's he's at that age where it's kind of I don't know. But then Lucas Raymond just got 8x8 too, right?
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I didn't see that one.
That's very possible.
Yesterday, I believe. I don't know. I got a text message saying, who is Lucas Raymond? I said, the Detroit Red Wings Lucas Raymond? And he's like, well, why did they give them 8x8?
Now, has Swayman signed in Boston yet?
I don't know.
That's another weird one.
Yeah.
I don't think yet.
They traded away his hug pal to the Senators. So I thought, okay, that's a done deal. And it's still not done as far as I know.
No. It just means hockey's here, baby. That's what this all means. Is all this conversation is because hockey's here. We're elated. That's how we are.
So back. Yeah.
All right. With that, what are you when the players hit the ice on Thursday, Jessi Pierce? What are you the most intrigued by? Like, what's your instant? This is going to be a storyline. What's in the old noggin about what you think that you'll be tracking for your employers at NHL.com?
I mean, I am curious, as most of us are, about some of those line combinations. Training camp and preseason, I do that very gently, very softly, because things can change on a whim. And really, you're using this to see all these. There's 57 guys at training camp, right? And to start things off, it's a hodgepodge on either side of the groupings. But I want to get a good look at Jakub Trenin. I haven't seen him. I never obviously paid attention to him on his opposing teams when they faced Minnesota. So I'm just looking to see what he brings. Liam Ogren, I had heard earlier this week as well, you guys, that his shot is as hard as any NHLers, and they would be shocked. This person had said they'd be shocked if he did get sent down to Iowa because he deserves this opportunity. Wow. So I think Liam Ogren's another one. I know we've all been talking about him for a couple of weeks now. And just any other new names. I think Minnesota didn't perform too great at the Prospect Showcase against St. Louis and Chicago this past weekend. So I don't know that there's necessarily any names from that roster that are going to be fantastic. I think Riley Heidt and Hunter Haight both showed glimpses, but I think both showed more than anything that they need at least a year or two down in Iowa. So again, going back to the roster itself, I think Liam Ogren is going to be the big circle. Let's see what we can do. And then just in general, see what kind of shape Philip Gustafsson is in as well. That's important. We've talked about that time and time again as well. So a couple of those things. And then, just say, hey, hi, how are you? All that fun stuff.
I ripped you 18 times. I love people my ass. AJ, what do you think?
I think the line combos are probably at the top of my list, but I think secondary to that is the goaltender fitness. I think we all know Marc-Andre Fleury is going to come in and just be flower. I mean, it seems like the last year with the Wild, whether that's for his career or maybe he does like a one-day thing with Pittsburgh or one final goodbye with Pittsburgh, who knows? But, based on what Jessi has reported within the past calendar year, given Gustafson's fitness and what I learned somewhat recently about the Wallstead kind of fitness showing up to Iowa. Those guys need to show up ready to go. And so I think that's going to be very telling and maybe could persuade. Have they been floating the names of the name of Gustafson to some other teams? Cough, Vancouver. And does that kind of accelerate anything down the road if he shows up in a less than ideal spot where it's like, well, if you're not going to take this seriously, we're not going to take you trying to get back to that kind of number one goaltender spot seriously. The other one for me, and this is not a big name by any means, but I'm more curious to kind of find out what he can bring, maybe what he assumes his role will be within the team. But Jacob Lauko, coming over from the Boston Bruins, noted Lord of the Rings diehard, which is weird out of the blue. He's a massive Lord of the Rings fan, apparently. So
this is good. See, I need this information. This is how I'm breaking the ice. Yep. I don't know anything about Lord of the Rings.
I have nothing.
Fantastic trilogy. It's the one of the few series that gets like better with every movie, but it doesn't matter. When it comes to hockey, he brings that kind of physicalness. He brings that grittiness, but I want to know if he thinks that this is a lineup that he can maybe crack getting up to even the top 9, because I think you bring him in and he's immediately, you think about a guy that can probably bounce between the press box, bounce between fourth line, maybe fill in and just get those, kind of killing minutes to just go out there and don't get scored on. Maybe throw the body around, but don't get scored on.
Right.
But I want to know if he thinks that's his role now, coming from Boston to a team that, as we all identified last year, and so did people in the locker room, needed to be a little more of that FU attitude, more of that physicalness, and to kind of, people regret coming to Minnesota to play us.
And Trennan's going to be gritty as well, right? Like I'm not saying, and guys don't really fight now. Like that's just a non-starter. But I think that they're bringing Trennan in to help kill penalties. Like I do think that, to use a hockey term, I think that they feel they'll have more sandpaper guys now than they did. Mm-hmm. So, Jessi, as far as the line combinations go, John Hines joined us on Saturday. And we thought that you'd be out on a golf course or something, so we didn't even try. I
probably was, yeah.
I was gonna say, or as beer.
We didn't need a repeat of Bill Guerin. I don't think Hines would come at me like that, so it's fine.
No, he wouldn't. No. But anyway, he said he talked about the Boldy Kaprizov line, and so I said, "Is that line going to start training camp together?" And he said, "No, it's not." He said he talked about diversifying the goal scoring abilities around lines, top 6 instead of top line. So I think we are going to, my guess is we're going to see first line will be Ek, Zuccarello, Kaprizov to make people happy. Although doesn't really make me happy because
but it makes Matt's twins, happy.
And the pass happy twins. Let's pass the puck back and forth. No, it's not the Harlem Globetrotters. Yeah, you hang up. No, you hang up. And so the second line will be Boldy, Boldy, Rossi, Johansson. That's where I want to start. Okay. So here's what I'm going to be looking for from day one. 2 players, but one in particular. Johansson and Goudreau. What do we see? Now, Freddie I think he got hurt in Toronto early last year, and he was clearly slowed. And again, I'm not going to dump on him too bad because I just don't think he's that good. Like, I think he's a role guy. Johansson's a different story. I want to see a fire lit under this guy every time he practices, preseason games, whatever it is, when he leaves in his car, I want to see a fire here. Like, you're coming off an incredibly, what I thought to be an embarrassing year. So my biggest thing is not his shape, because he's in shape, but his mental mindset. Because, that's a guy who needs to, if he doesn't have it, Jessi, he needs to lose his job. Like, this is not a let's try it again. And Hines, I asked him and I said, I was very disappointed with how JoJo played. And Hines is like, yeah, and there's going to be competitions, but I think age would confirm this. Made it very clear that Johansson's going to start probably on a top 6 role. So that's my big one, because I got no time for any crap with that guy anymore.
Yeah. And I think you've got a guy like Travis Boyd who's going to come in and vouch for a spot, somebody with experience, somebody Minnesota fans are probably fairly familiar with. I think if you put Freddie with the right players to kind of get it clicking, he has a higher probability of success, right? And for me, that would be with Ryan Hartman and maybe Yakov Trenanen. As you'd mentioned, Judd, Trenanen's going to play that sandpaper role, that grittiness, that feisty. I remember when the Minnesota Wild signed him, we spoke with John Hines, and I asked John Hines which current Wild player he is most like, and he said Marcus Foligno, right? So Trennan is coming in to take some of that aggressive pressure off Foligno, so Foligno can maybe get back to doing a bit more and stay out of the box. Yeah, I mean, Freddie, it's a big question. And I think Marcus Johansson, too. He's the other one. I would put Marcus Johansson on the fourth line. I have no problems with that. I think there was a lack of effort last year, and I don't say that gently because that's a very bad thing to say about somebody, but I just did not see the will there. And yes, it's a contract year, and we can say all we want about that, but I would put him on the fourth line, and I would put Liam Ogren on the second line with Ek and Boldy is how I would lay that out, I think. And I think that would get them going. And you do that maybe in one of the final preseason games, just as a reminder, saying just to remind you, Marcus.
I like this. So you're manipulating it. I like this a lot.
Yes. Playing those mind games, moving the chess pieces. This isn't checkers anymore. We're into chess. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important. And you mentioned everybody going hard. They have to go hard from day one of camp. There's all this stress, all this fodder about, hey, we're going to get off to a good start. Well, show me. Prove that in camp. Prove that in preseason every single day. Like I said, I think it's obviously going to be a very familiar roster, a very similar roster once it's all said and done to what we had last year. But Murat Huzdinov is another guy that we hadn't really talked about yet. He's another guy that it's kind of, where do you belong? Are you truly consistently night in and night out an NHLer, or is maybe Iowa a fit for you too? That's another guy that's not, rock solid in there just yet. So should be a good camp. Freddie, make a decision, man.
Top 4 centers to start the season. AJ, your guess. Top 4 centers.
Do you want it in order, or
yeah?
Let's go in order. I bet you Eriksson Ek is probably going to be your top line center to start the year. And I think that has to be what it is. I think it should be probably Marco Rossi, but I'm nervous about the fact that you move Ryan Hartman back to the center because they've done that before. I really don't think that should be it, but just like if you're gonna go back and try to give Marcus Johansson a chance to re-earn that spot, that tells me maybe you're opening the door for other possibilities such as that too, but it should be Marco Rossi. I think Husnadinov should be in that third line, but that third line to me is weird because he's probably going to have to be paired with some more like physical guys that aren't great with the scoring touch, and I think that doesn't suit his game as much. So I think there could be early struggles for him, which that's another conversation. And then I think Freddie should round out that fourth line center spot just because, like, does he have the skill? No. But does he try hard? Yes. And if he's healthy, that's kind of the guy you want there. And you don't need to throw him out there for 15, 16 minutes a night. If he gets double digits, he's probably going to be thrilled.
Jessi, what do you think about that?
I'm putting Rossi at the top line and Ecker on the second. I know that's the unpopular. It's not to necessarily say that he's not the number one center on this team, but going back to what Hines had said and kind of spreading out that love, spreading out that wealth. And Ek playing with Zuccarello and Kaprizov, it just adds too weird of an element, too off of an element. We've saw the success that what did we call that? The Hartman, Foligno, Ek, was that the one that was doing really good? The Grief line did really well one year too. I don't know. But I mean, Ek seems to play better with some guys like that. And Boldy has some of that feistiness. Not to say that Kirill doesn't, because Kirill's obviously a little pitbull out there. But I would put Ek on that second line, I think, between Ogren and Boldy. And then I would actually give Freddie a shot at that third line. And then Huznadinov or Travis Boyd as your fourth line center. And but similar to AJ saying, I would have Foligno. I'm looking at my notes here. I'd have Foligno and Mojo on the wings for Huznadinov or Boyd.
So where is so at the end of the day here, where does Hartman land?
Hartman's on the wing. I keep him on the wing. He's a left winger.
Where he should be. Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah, no, I agree. I don't care if Ek is first line and Rossi is second line, like AJ said, or vice versa. Like Jessi said, I don't care. That's fine. Like, I think that will help figure itself out. I think I'm going Hustadinov on the third line for now. Here's my thing. So Goudreau to me is either a fourth line center, I think, or I stick him on the wing. He's the guy I'm least concerned because I mean, he needs to do whatever you want. And I'm still not completely convinced he don't get traded to Columbus. Like, I think he'd take the trade. he'd be he loves Dean. Dean loves him. He thrived with Dean. I'm not convinced, but that by the end of training camp, there's not a potential that Gaudreau is moved and that Gustafsson is moved. Now, Jessi, here is one thing that Hines said that I found to be very intriguing, because it could be a headache as big as you could possibly have. And I think he said all of the right things, partially PR wise too. He said that he would be comfortable going into the season carrying 3 goaltenders. Now, I don't know how that works necessarily, because Fleury definitely does not have to play all the time, but he's back, and he definitely has to be in the mix. But so if you have Fleury, Gustafsson, and Wallstedt, first of all, how comfortable would you be with that for an extended period of time? And second of all, do you think it works? It's a lot of goaltenders in one room.
I've been on that for a month or two now. That's the vibe that I've been getting, that's what they're going to do.
Sure, but do you like it? Like, does it work in your mind?
I do, because then it still gives you kind of that flexibility to move. I think you need to make a decision on Gustafsson by Thanksgiving. Figure that out, right? And then see where the chips lie. Maybe you do let Jesper go down and absolutely dominate the AHL. That wouldn't be a bad thing either, right? But I think it's so important for him to learn under somebody like Marc-Andre Fleury, like how special that really is. And again, Marc-Andre kind of gets to call his shots. So I don't have a problem with it to start. I really don't. I mean, I get goalies need games. I understand that, but also I just think it's invaluable for Jesper to be up here. So I think carrying 3 makes some sense. It's weird, right? It doesn't happen often, but he has to. Yes, you have to slot him in, and it's tough because it's not an easy schedule to start things off with either, right? They're on the road, and it's just kind of wonky all over St. Louis, Winnipeg. They come back for one, I think. But if you have the right rotation in place, and again, this is all very dependent to me on Philip Gustafsson and his performance. I think that's really what it comes down to, because if Philip Gustafsson comes out the gates and does poorly, you just made Bill Guerin's decision very, very easy.
Right, but you're taking away but then it's tougher to trade. Like, it's a weird.
Yeah, you want it done before camp because you don't want people to see how bad.
Yeah, but if to your point, you're going to take him to Thanksgiving, you actually want him to be playing well. It's a weird thing. It's sort of like 3 quarterbacks, which is, okay, we got the young guy, we got the veteran, and then we got the guy who's okay, but he's not great. And if he struggles, so Age, your thoughts, go ahead.
To stay on the football analogy, who knows? Maybe somebody gets hurt, and maybe all of this conversation just doesn't matter, and and all of a sudden, like you just can't move a guy like Philip Gustafsson, because now you have a cemented 1-2 of Marc-Andre Fleury, Jesper Wallstedt, or vice versa. Somebody tweaks something, and they just can't make it happen. I think the whole point, and I've been dead set on this. Like with Marc-Andre Fleury coming back, if he's here for another season, which he is, I need Wallstedt not attached at the hip, but pretty darn close. Like that is.
I think we all agree on that.
That's just like to have that firsthand, being able to be in the shadow and watch exactly how Flower goes about his routine and how he prepares for a game, how he deals with when he has an off night, seeing how he can just kind of shake it off and move ahead. The next game is the most important one type of thing. That's all so important for a young goaltender that is still basically just a block of clay. You can mold him into whatever. And the sculptor here is basically Picasso. You just have to let him do his thing and just keep him up. I do need him to get in some games though, and that's going to be a nightmare for them to try to juggle, because Flower, you can use the excuse however many times you want, he's older and we got to take it easy with him, but then it's if Gustafsson's, you're throwing him out there game after game, you're trying to do that advertisement of window shopping. Hey, look how good he is. You should probably pull the trigger. Then it's, you're battling that. You want to do good, but also not too good, and where you have to keep him and all this other stuff. And that's just going to be a massive headache if they carry 3 on opening night. Well,
and mind you, and I forget, and I was just going to pull up the schedule now. They're in Pittsburgh pretty early on, right? And they're in Montreal pretty early on. And you know what that means? That's the Marc-Andre Fleury fanfare sideshow. Yeah. So, you'll have Flower slotted in for those games regardless. Same with Montreal.
They did last year.
Here.
In Pittsburgh.
Because Marc-Andre didn't want you, but this is his final goodbye. This is his final bow. Year, yeah. So it'll be a media frenzy. And also, while we're still talking goaltenders, I need to remind everybody, because it's the hill that I will forever die on. Wins are not goaltending stats. It does not matter how many games they win. They're not a goaltending stat. Thank you very much. That's all I needed to say about that.
That's like pitching wins,
Yeah,
quarterback wins.
It's not a
Although
stat.
I do think quarterback wins mean more.
Sure.
But yes, you are correct. And
I do
actually,
think at times though losses can be like a valuable stat.
well,
Because,
and this also gets to here's the stat that you can at least partially pin on the goaltending. And Hines said that this has been a collaborative effort by the entire coaching staff. Here's the stat: penalty kill. Because if your goaltender is not like that, is the old cliche. Your best penalty killer is your goaltender. And the Wild was second to last in the league on the PK last year. Atrocious. Hines basically said this is not a one guy thing. Like we didn't just assign Jack or Jason King. This is we all sat down. So, Jessi, what do you think? How hard or how difficult or how much work do you think needs to go into improving the PK? Which, yes, it's a scheme, but it's also like you work your ass off. Like the power play is a beautiful, constructive thing, and there's a lot of things right and wrong about that. But like the penalty kill is to go back to it, sandpaper guys, right? What do you think the expectation should be, goaltending and the 4 guys killing the penalty, for a penalty kill that was 30th in the league and submarine this team actively last season?
Well, yeah, I mean, you need to put the right guys, and I think that John Hines knows that. I think that's been a key point. I think that will continue to be a key point here at training camp. I think you got a guy like Brock Faber, who is gritty but also very skilled. You're going to add Yakov Trenin in there. And then who your other 2 guys, I'd say play around with it, right? I think Murad Huznadinov could be another guy who's going to quarterback that, really. You look at the past couple years of penalty killers, Brandon Duhaime, Connor Dewar. I mean, they were never necessarily your top guys, but they just worked because, as you'd mentioned, they are hard workers. So put those players there. I think Hartsey is another one that could possibly fit into that role. And maybe Freddie Gaudreau, if he shows us, again, we've discussed how hardworking he can be. That could be good. But I think that's just it. I think for whatever reason, Minnesota did not play around with that enough, didn't try enough different situations. Yes, the scheming and the system itself needed to be different. But I think also it was a better evaluation of the right players, putting them out there on the ice and trusting those players. And I don't know if that was necessarily there last year. Lucky for Minnesota fans, it can't get much worse. I mean, it could get worse, but it just can't get much worse.
32nd.
Yeah, like it can't get much worse. So it's, there's a way to buoy up now.
But it starts partially in goal too, right? Because I mean, you've got to get those saves. I think Gaudreau, if he stays, slam dunk. Hartman, slam dunk. Hustadinov's an interesting choice because I do like dude can win a face-off. And to go back to, I know it drives AJ nuts, but the face-off truthers, who cares about the face-offs? Well, it's freaking possession of the puck. So like Hustadinov's an interesting choice, but I do think that, and Trenin too, right? So I think what we're going to see is definitely, because part of this just comes down to work. Like part of it just comes down to, you can scheme all you want, but if guys don't, because the job sucks. If guys don't embrace the suck of the job, you're not going to be good there. So yeah, that's an interesting one.
Really quick too on that.
Go ahead.
Like, I know this is going to sound weird because when you look at it stat wise, they have the 10th best power play. But I still think the power play can be a lot better, and practicing against a better power play in practice is going to make the penalty kill better at the end of the day. Because my biggest problem, and I think this is maybe the biggest complaint with the Wild over the past 5, 6, 8, 9 years. Like, you watch them as an outsider, and it's like, this is just kind of boring hockey compared to the fast paced of other teams. Like, it's been up until like the emergence of Kaprizov, they've been kind of just like a snooze fest for a lot of games where it's like you get out there, you play 60 minutes, and there's no flashiness. The power play, in my mind, is still a lot of the same. You look at other teams, and it's quick, snappy puck movement around the perimeter. It's moving the defense like alignment, so they have to get out of position. The Wild, it seems like granted, it's effective to an extent, but I think it could be so much better if they just move the puck quicker. But they're just hoping that the opponents willingly take themselves out of position. And I think if they do that in practice, that's what the penalty kill grows accustomed to. is, okay, we don't have to move all that much. Whereas when you go up against a team like the Oilers, or you run into a team like the Avalanche that are snappy, they pass with intention. You know, they move it down to the low like goal line area, and all of a sudden you blink and Makar's with it at the top of the circle on the far side. You're going to be bad. Like, you're just not used to it. So the penalty kill obviously needs to get better, but I think that starts in part with the power play improving with its speed and conciseness, because right now it's very slow and boring. And granted, like I said, I know I sound weird because it's obviously good enough. They're top 10 last year, but I think it could just be so much better.
There's too much patience with it.
Yes.
I mean, that comes to a lot of situations that the Wild put themselves in. There's always been too much patience. If only they would listen to the fans yelling shoot, I think that it would skyrocket their
Who do you think
I hate those people. I'm so sorry.
opening night at the X against the Blue Jackets, Jessi, who do you think quarterbacks the power play?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know.
Because that's the key thing, right?
Right.
Like, that's the starting point of the whole thing.
I don't know. Do you put Jared Spurgeon on your top power play, or do you start him at power play number 2? Right? Like,
that's a question. And Brock had never been the quarterback on a top power play until last year.
Yeah.
Like, the Gophers didn't use him there, and which is, I don't know what Bob was doing or thinking with that one, but the point is, like, he hadn't done that, so. Like, I don't think we should just default to, well, it's Brock's job. I don't know that.
I get that sense that that's where I feel more comfortable, just until we see how Jared Spurgeon looks. None of us have seen Jared Spurgeon play hockey in a very, very long time, right? If he comes back and is the same old tried and true, and there's no reason to believe he won't be, because he takes very good care of himself, and he always is. He's been working out and being very diligent in his return. I think you obviously consider that, but it's between Brock or Jared. Those are kind of the only two defensemen back there that I would trust to handle that. I don't think Midzi or Brodin are necessarily fits for that spot. And I'm not going to mention Bogo or Chisholm or John Merrill for that matter. So I would say Brock number 1, Spurge number 2, unless Spurge comes out flying and we say, hey, let's do this. Because I thought Brock did well there, right? And again, I think he's going to take another step. He's got that size too.
Hold on a second. Last week you said he was going to take a step back.
I said just a little bit of regression.
He was going to take a step back. Now you're saying he's going to take a step forward.
Just a baby step back.
Garen's right. You're a mess.
I know. I know.
Is there a chance you maybe see what they did with Bouchard, Pierre-Marc Bouchard, back in the day when it was him going out there to play that quarterback role, where maybe a Matt Zuccarello gets moved up to the top and he's the dish master.
Well, they'll go with 4 forwards.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so. But and then, you have, we know Bogo loves to fire the puck towards the net. Maybe not on the net, but
right. That's the problem. He's not reliable enough.
Yeah.
And plus, no.
And sometimes they kind of want Matt Zuccarello on the second power play, not the first. I get why he's there. I do. I get it. But again, we just talked about the pass happiness. Right. That's a part of the problem, right? I think Matt's might be suited on the second.
So who's the first power play?
Will it be? It'll be Kirill, Matz, Faber,
Boldy.
Kirill, Matz, Faber, Boldy, and
I think they go Zuccarello.
It's yeah.
So who's at the point besides Brock? Who's at the point with Brock?
I think you would probably go
Zuki.
Yeah.
You're going to structure it to where Faber's probably like on that pivot in the middle, where it can rotate to either have Kirill drop to like essentially flop Ovi's office just to that right-handed side, or you can get it to Zuccarello, who can then work down low and feed one to the middle or ring it around.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Final thoughts. Training camp starts Thursday. Are there any final thoughts here? Have we missed on topics? Feel like we've hit them all, but
I'll bring up one, and maybe Jessi, just because Jessi wasn't there on Saturday, but Matt Boldy was kind of brought up in part due to the focus of John Hines, and they said like they want to shape him to be that like true kind of power forward, and that it instantly makes me think of Jerome McGinley. I love Jerome McGinley like that. He was a wild killer for years, but that is like in my mind the perfect power forward. They want to get a more complete game out of Matt Boldy, and we saw like at the end of last season just how good he was when he applies himself each and every night. That is, besides everything that we already had talked about, Matt Boldy, kind of what he brings into training camp, I think is my biggest like guy to watch. Just how much he's elevated his game from, he already had two-way aspects to it, but adding to those building blocks, I think is going to be really important to see if he actually did or not.
Yeah, last year, Matt Boldy adding that physical presence. He was hard to get off the puck, right? I mean, his stick movement was already good. His skating was very fluid, but adding that body in there because he's a big dude. He's a tall dude. I think helped tremendously. I think the big thing about Boldy too was last year you could see him really starting to trust his shot. He wasn't just taking the shots; he was also trusting it. Which again, as we've spoken about on this very podcast, a lot of those guys, it's not that they don't trust it; they just don't take the shots. Like you need to shoot to score. That's the basic knowledge there. So I think that's where Boldy's really going to be a very good. Exactly. Just tell him. You guys tell him. You fans, you let him know. I'm curious to see how that goes. I'm curious about nothing else really. We again catching up with some of the guys. Everybody seems to be coming in healthy, so there's not really any concerns there.
There's
So
no concerns.
yep.
100%.
I mean, I think that'll be. I think it's just mostly some of those younger guys. Huzadinov, Ogren, even Rossi's still kind of in that pool of where are they at and what does that line combination look like with them included.
All right, guys, fantastic work. Check out Jess's work, of course, where she is going to, I'm sure, starting Thursday, be prolific for the league website, wild.com. You can find her stuff there. You can find her on, with her friend Kirsten Call, Bardown Beauties. Great stuff as well. AJ Fredrickson, I'm Judd. We are almost to hockey season, so who knows? We might show up before next Tuesday.